All right, brother. Here we go. You good?
I'm good. Very good. How are you?
Uh, I'm great, man. I'm going to be such a competent professional. I'm going to knock out the housekeeping right off the bat before I forget here. So, everybody, we appreciate you. You know, all hours of the day, Boz and I just text each other about how much we appreciate you all day long. If I could show you my phone, I would. But in all honesty, this is all your guys and men and women show, more than it's our show. So we want to hear from you. So. And you guys drive a lot of the content, and you will today as well. If you want to help keep supporting the show, go to verynotrandom.com, check out all the cycles that we offer, on-ramp programs. There's a whole bunch of get your firsts, of which the most popular always seems to be get your first strict pull-up, but there's a bunch of them. There's conditioning programs, run, bike, row, 1.5 mile run, jump rope. There's barbell stuff. So check that all out. It just goes right to your btwb app. It's all laid out for you. You just click on whatever it is that day and you become a superhero is basically what occurs. For the gym owners side of the house, which we're kind of going to talk about gym owners today as well, gym owners have to do a lot of things. You should be interested in workout tracking, gym management, billing. btwb has all of those in an all-in-one solution. No different platforms anymore. So if you are a gym owner interested in that all-in-one solution, go to btwb.com and check that out. Okay, well, I'm gonna give one more shout out today because I saw a really cool post on Instagram from Amber T, specifically regarding the VNR deadlift capacity program. She says, I just finished the 8-week VNR deadlift capacity program on Thursday, so there couldn't have been a better day for this. She retested her 1 rep max. She added 10 pounds to her lifetime PR and
Nice.
25 pounds to where she started the program 2 months ago.
Sweet.
So, yeah, really cool. It's almost like this stuff works. And here I thought we were a bunch of charlatans. Okay.
Hey, you just got to show up and do it.
Isn't that
Nothing
just
to it.
85% of the magic right there?
Yeah, man.
Like it's
Many such cases, Pat.
yeah, just make it happen. So we get
Yeah.
a cool topic today that I found posted on one of the shows from Robert B. Robert, I'm not going to lie to you, there was a lot of grammatical errors in your question, but I went ahead and tuned them up here. So let's see.
You make them look good in post.
Possible topic. So he says, gyms have evolved. They seem to use somebody else's programming. That's very common these days.
Mm-hmm.
Are we losing something as coaches and trainers by no longer thinking of the programming and just following the work of somebody else? And what are we gaining as coaches by following somebody else, I guess, if anything? Personally, I used to program all my workouts and made many mistakes from which I learned from, but a new wave of coaches around me don't seem to question the programming. They just simply regurgitate it without much knowledge of why the programming is either good or sometimes less than optimal. Your thoughts, gentlemen?
I've got many, Pat. Yeah, there's a few things that jump to mind immediately here. I think the first thing that I would discuss is that I don't think you necessarily lose anything by doing somebody else's programming if you're not afraid to kind of take it as it falls and adjust as necessary, just like coaching. And what I mean by that is when you have an athlete that comes into the gym, you don't know what you're going to get. You could get somebody who is totally new, has no experience, they haven't moved a day in their life before, and they're a bit of a train wreck, honestly, when it first comes to teaching them certain things.
Mm-hmm.
In that scenario, it's going to take quite a bit of hand holding. You're probably going to have to mold that person into the athlete that you believe that they can be. And that's going to be a long-term hands-on process. On the other hand, you might get somebody who's been CrossFitting for 6 or 7 years. They went to an excellent gym and they just happened to move across the country and now they're in your neck
Sure.
of the woods. And you inherit this athlete and they're great. They already have good habits. They show up. They know how to move. They know how to work. And at
We'll
that
take
point,
200 of those, please.
it's nice when it happens, but it's not a hands-off situation still. Just because they come to you with this kind of gift wrap package doesn't mean that you just wipe your hands as a coach and you say, well, my work here is done. No, you're still going to have an approach where you have to analyze. And in some cases, it's harder because what they need to work on and how they need to work on it isn't as self-evident. You don't know what that next step is because it's not as glaringly obvious.
Mm-hmm.
That is really the discernment there between a good coach and somebody who's a little bit more novice is what do you do with that person? And I think there's an analog there with programming as well. Just because you're using an out of the box program, if you do nothing to that, that's the same thing as taking that athlete that, quote, knows what they're doing and you just don't really engage with them. There's still plenty of opportunity for somebody who's an active, engaged coach to take that program that serves as the base of what they're doing and modify it for the people that are in front of them that day. Make little tweaks here and there that fit better with the culture of their gym. Take into account the equipment that they have or the general strengths and weaknesses of the
Right.
population that they're dealing with. All of these things translate into a better experience, even if you're taking that base program. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to make a radical change, but you are going to consider it in the context of what you've got in front of you. And so if that's taking place, I don't know that you lose much because you're still really, really engaged with your mind and the reality of the people and the situation that you're in. Unfortunately, though, I don't know that that's common when somebody is using an out of the box program. And so therein lies the rub. So I'll
Yeah.
pause there for a minute and let you give your first thoughts.
I guess, what I would say to that, and piggybacking off one of Robert's points, is first of all, fitness freedom, right? Like, do whatever you want to do. You can do whatever you want to do. It's your gym. You're great. Um, in an ideal world, you would have an understanding of all these various concepts that are required to be an effective gym owner and coach. And then potentially as you get busier and you can't do everything, it might make sense for you to allocate your time and resources in different ways, but you understand all these concepts and principles and you're not blissfully ignorant as to it. That would be wonderful. I should also say, it's like, well, I don't like when, like, you watch the news or something and some, like, a expert gets on and they tell you that about something, and then you don't realize that they're like a stockholder in that company. They had like a conflict of interest. So Linchpin offers gym programming, and I would feel
Yeah.
bizarre if I didn't say that. I don't care if you use it or not. But here's what I'm saying. Um, I probably left some things off this list, right? You want to be a gym owner? Okay. All right, what do you need to do with your 8-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour workday? What? Okay, so you're gonna be a gym owner. I'm sure I left some things off this list. I just scratched them down real quick before we clicked on. You've got to know all the aspects of every movement that will be performed in your gym.
Wait, I was going to say, hold on. It's a short list, right? You just show up
It's
and
so
coach.
short.
That's
It's
it?
so short. Just gymnastics, power lifts, Olympic lifts,
Yeah.
biking, rowing, jump rope, kettlebells. By the way, each of those you could dedicate your entire life to pursuing, but let's go ahead and be really familiar with all of them. For all of them, it'd be great to have just a bunch of just verbal, tactile, audio cues, on-ramp programs, how to teach beginners, how to improve intermediate and advanced athletes, how to run one-on-one classes versus multiple person classes, create those onboard programs, implement them, manage all the athletes, be able to answer nutrition questions. How do you deal with injuries? Got to go ahead and promote your gym, get the word out, hopefully attract new members, identify and develop coaches for your gym, have a process and a plan for that. Make sure payments are getting processed nice, that the gym is clean and sanitary, all equipment is safe, maintained, and working in a high state of readiness. Be engaged and proactive with the culture you wish to embody and how your gym's going to grow. Handle client input, concerns, questions, complaints, and recommendations. Understand scaling and modifying workouts on an individual basis, and program workouts.
Irregular Pat GPT over here. Dang.
And actually didn't use it for that. And I'm sure any gym owner watching this is like, dude, you barely scratched the surface
Yeah.
about what I have to do. You have 30 things you need to add to that list. And you know what? Hey, you have to love and do all of those personally to be like a cool, hardcore gym owner. Maybe cool. A lot of people just starting off that don't have a lot of resources and funds and investors, they are doing all those things by themselves and they are burning it at both ends. And they might do that for a long or short period of time, but eventually, and in doing that, they probably develop an understanding to some degree of all of those different areas that when they do bring in that other coach, and I have learned this the hard way, and I start to offload this to somebody else, that if they've done it themselves for a while, they probably have a good understanding of what it looks like when it's done well and when it's done poorly, and they start to slowly offload those things to grow their community or for them to dedicate a bit of their time or resources somewhere else. And I just think it's just one of those, um, it's also one of those things where there's so many things you have to do as a gym owner that you're a really lucky and blessed individual if you love every single one. There's probably some you maybe you love 85% of the list. That's a really high percentage, and there's 15% of running a gym that you really just don't care for, but you love 85% of it. Well, maybe one of those is, I don't know, coaching Olympic lifts. So you hire an Olympic lifting coach because they're so much better at it than you are, and you didn't really enjoy it anyway. You enjoy all the other aspects. That's cool. Maybe it's the nutrition. Maybe you're sick of cleaning your own bathroom, even though you could do it. So you're going to have somebody else do it. And maybe one of those things eventually is programming. You're like, I love coaching people. I love running the class. I love the human interaction. And when I sit down and I write out the week's workouts, I'd rather jump in front of a bus. I love coaching them. I hate creating them. There could be people out there that are
Sure.
like that and vice versa. And so I just think it's one of those things of, now, ideally, if they are going to choose to offload that to somebody else, like I said before, my ideal situation would be that they have developed an ability and an aptitude and an eye for what's nonsense and what's wonderful and effective, and therefore they know what they're getting into. So that's kind of,
Yep.
that was a big list, I know, but I'll kind of pause there.
Yeah, I was waiting for that actually. It was funny. I had it at the tip of my mind, and then you finished off with that statement there. I was going to say what I was wanting to hear in that entirely reasonable, pragmatic analysis of what people have to handle on a daily basis, and therefore why you might want to offload some of it. Totally reasonable. But what I was waiting for was it cannot be a supplement for a lack of skill.
Mm,
And I think that's where it starts to become a problem, right? If I know that I'm just not a very good programmer, that's fine. And maybe I don't have to be the world's greatest, workout writer. That's fine. But I should at least have some basic competency, like you said, to understand why certain things are going to go together well, when they start to
right.
get a little redundant, why certain choices are going to be made. And then again, the context of how do I adapt that for my own population. I think if it's done because that is just being sidestepped and the coach is not doing what they're supposed to, therefore, that's where you start to get into problems. And I see
Yeah.
that
It'd be
manifesting
a
kind of two
shame.
different ways. Yeah, it is a shame. Number one is just clearly sidestepping a lack of skill. I mean, and if that's you and you know that I'm talking to you, you gotta look in the mirror and brush up on that a little bit. Doesn't mean you have to do it all yourself, but you should make sure that you understand enough theoretical underpinning of the program that you're doing. And then second, it's weird. Like I think it's increasingly we start to see these kind of like I don't know what to call them. It's almost like they're like celebrity programs. Like there's some big names out there. They've been in the CrossFit land for a long time, and that's cool. They get lionized a lot, probably for good reason. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it well. However, that doesn't mean that they're infallible, and that doesn't mean that they are superior to Joe Blow down the street who's been doing this just with no exposure. And so I think sometimes
100%.
people
There's
use
some
that,
geniuses out there that just don't have a big platform.
right, and that don't care to because they're serving
Yep.
their community well, they're crushing
100%.
it, and like that's what they're there to do. And so good for them. Um, and I just think that sometimes it's easy, especially if you know that maybe your skill is not as refined as you'd like it to be. It's easy to lionize these programs and the people writing them and believe that, like, well, they're just going to handle all of it. And there's never any thought that I have to put into it because that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And so watch out for that behavior. It's an easy one to fall into, particularly if your skill is not that great, and particularly if you have somebody who's kind of on that tier of, you know, pedestalization. You got to watch for that. So, a couple things to watch for there. But yeah, I think it's totally pragmatic to take certain things off your plate. I have it written on my whiteboard actually here, a little bit rambly here, but it's this big slogan that's been on the top of my whiteboard for years now. It's basically permanent pen at this point, you know?
Right.
And it says, don't master games you hate playing. How
Mm,
much time do we all spend in our lives trying to get good at things that we just don't like doing? Do you know what I mean? And hey, man, we're all adults. There's
100%.
there are certain things and responsibilities like, yeah, sometimes you just got to suck it up and clean your toilet. You know what I mean? Like there's a
Yes.
reality there. But at the end of the day, I don't have to refine every single skill set on earth. I cannot. There's not enough time. There's not enough energy, etc. And so at a certain point, I have to decide, hey, I hate doing this. It's not for me. Somebody's going to do it better. Let's outsource. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yep. And you're right too of big name, medium name, small name, no name. And some of those things garner a certain amount of attention just based upon how social media and the algorithm
Sure.
works, right? Or whatever it
Yep.
happens to be. But I always come back to something that you said a while ago that I might butcher every now and then. That somebody will ask me like, "What's the right program for me?" And it's like it's the one that you stick with and that you enjoy.
That you're
And so
fired
whether
up to
that's
do. Yep.
yeah, and so whether that's one, now apply that to your community. What's the best programming for your community?
Mhm.
It's probably if you've dabbled in several, and it seems to be obvious that there's one that resonated, that stuck with, that put more smiles on faces that people were fired up to do and fostered, obviously good results as well. Like I don't care whose name's on that program. If everybody is generally speaking injury free, happy, and advancing forward, probably the
Yeah.
program for your community,
And
honestly.
hey, the alternative is something that can be a little insidious and you got to watch out for it. And it does require you to swallow a hard to swallow pill. I've seen this happen in gyms. I was actually talking to a friend of mine just the other day about this exact phenomena where, the owners have a program that they like to run. They're really staunch with it and their belief in it, but some of their members are not that fired up on it. And when they bring that to the coach's attention, the coach has kind of had this attitude of like, yeah, but you guys don't understand how good this program is. And
Ah,
it's like, oh
yes.
man, you got to watch out. If the people that you are in charge of their fitness, if they're coming to you and telling you, hey, I'm not enjoying this anymore and like I'm kind of over it, generally speaking, the response isn't like, well, you just don't understand and therefore I'm right. You gotta be careful there. Sometimes it's true. People don't know what they don't know, and you are in that expert position. Sometimes you have to hold the line. I get that. But there are definitely other times where you got to keep that ear open and say, hey, you know what? I'm hearing this from a few different people, and these are people that have been around, and you know, I've brought them up. I know that their experience is good, and I know that they're reasonable people that want to be here, and they're typically motivated. And if that's the message I'm hearing a few times and increasingly, okay, what's going on here? Let's get to the bottom
Hmm.
of this because clearly there's a mismatch. And that can be just such a bad road to go down. And if you're not careful, you can end up 6 months deep. And now you got a couple members that have looked for other things. You've got this kind of division happening in the gym. It's a bad place. So
A
keep your
hundred,
ears open.
100%. The summary I would say of like that long list that I just said, and eventually you're like, I'm going to crash and burn. I need to offload some of this to somebody else because it's just a better use of my time. That comes down to, every episode is better if we can have a quote from Thomas Sowell. So, his
The mighty.
definition, his definition of economics is basically it's the allocation of scarce resources that have alternative uses. So the scarce resources are your time, your attention, your budget, or whatnot. And you have to make economic decisions as to what's the most intelligent use
Sure.
of your time, your attention, and your resources that gives the greatest bang for your buck to your community. And that economic decision is going to be different for every single gym owner.
Mhm.
And it's up to that gym owner to weigh the pros and cons and make sure that their community is moving in the right direction. But there's not just one way to do it. Just because this gym follows somebody's programming doesn't mean they're better or worse than the gym down the street that does their own programming. And because that gym down the street does their own, it doesn't mean that they're holier than thou compared to the other one. It's just what's the right choice for either one of those gyms. But go into those, programs, like we said, or those decisions, I should say, with your eyes wide open and ideally having developed, and this will take time, one way, shape, or form, a good understanding of what this subject matter is so that you can at least feel good about what decision it is and what direction you're going to pull the trigger.
Yeah. I've got one more kind of positive reason to choose somebody else's program? Because I think that was part of the question, right? Was, hey,
Yeah.
no,
What
it
are the
was kind of
pros? What are the
this,
cons?
yeah, this kind of thrust about, what do we lose from not doing our own program? And, obviously the skill to be able to do it, the discernment as to what's good and what's not,
Mm-hmm.
that could be lost. But I think there's also an important thing that can be gained from doing other people's programming, and that is a broader perspective of
Sure.
different approaches. And I've had this happen many times where, I personally, throughout the years, have always, given the choice, really enjoyed programming for myself. I used to
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy sitting down and writing out a couple months of programming and a basic plan and a template, coming back and refining
Absolutely.
that. Like I really genuinely enjoyed that process. However, after some time, months, years, now decades at this point, you start to realize that, hey, man, I've got patterns and biases just like everybody else. And I will absolutely trick my own self into avoiding some of the most important things that I should be doing in my
Sure.
fitness training because
Sure.
I don't really care to do them.
Right.
It's just
Turns
inevitable.
out you're human.
Yeah, exactly. And I can get up there and talk with the best of them about how it's so important to target your weaknesses, et cetera. And then I write the program myself and I take an objective step back and I'm like, man, there's a lot of my strengths all over this thing.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean?
Great looking
And
week.
yeah, it looks fun. And at a certain point, I do think it's very difficult to break out of those habits and those patterns, and seeing somebody else's programming and the way that they approach things and the different biases that they bring to the table can not only be refreshing, but it can be revealing into just different ways to think about things. And in turn, maybe some ways that you are thinking about things that you didn't even realize. And so I do think there's a lot to be gained there. But again, it's not a hands off approach. That's the difference. I can't just take a program out of the box and just like apply it
Mm-hmm.
mindlessly. But if I'm taking somebody else's programming and trying to figure out, okay, why did they decide to do this and not this? What do I think is going to come up based on what I've seen in the past recently? Kind of get into their mindset. I think that's very, very valuable. And in fact, I think that's how many of us back in the day learned to do this stuff in the first place. And for me, it was .com because it was
Mm-hmm.
really one of the only things available. But that's what you did. I didn't know that much about programming. So I started following the main site. I started dabbling with other programs, started trying to figure out, like, okay, what is it that is driving the next decision? And when I could get to the point that I could kind of anticipate relatively correctly what was going to
Mm-hmm.
happen in the future, I was like, okay, I think I got a decent handle on this. And that's when I would start kind of scripting my own and branching out on my own, and then coming back and looking into it, trying to figure out these next decisions, et cetera, et cetera. And it was this cycle that repeated itself. And so if you take that approach with somebody else's program, I do think that there is a lot to be learned, but it's not passive, like I said. And that to me is the true difference between somebody who's just going to implement somebody else's program and it's not going to go well versus somebody who's going to implement somebody else's program. And hey, it could be a total win, not just for your own development, but for your athletes as well.
I think the last thing that I would say is whatever decision a gym owner makes, realize that you're not tied to this decision for the rest of your life and the rest of your gym's
Absolutely. Yep.
existence. Maybe you just had a set of newborn twins and you've been programming for years and now you're not going to sleep for 9 months of your life. It might be a good time to offload something, but you love
Mhm.
it and you plan on coming back, or vice versa, whatever it happens to be. So you're allowed to go back and forth. You're allowed to dip your toe in some waters. You're allowed to experiment. You're allowed to see what works the best for you and your community. I would say if you're trying somebody else's stuff, um, if you try it for a couple of weeks, that's probably not going to do much. I would say probably need to try for a few months. Let's settle in for a good 12-week, slog, and just see like let if there is a difference or a process and how does that actually feel to everybody, and then whatever that happens to be. But you're not tied to it forever. That's all I would say.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. And that's a really good point. I think along with that lionization, people get this inertia behind what they're currently doing, and they feel like there's just no possibility of breaking out and trying something new. It's like, no, it's not that hard. You can absolutely jump around a little bit, see what's out there. It's a big world. You know
yep,
what I mean?
for sure. Um, I think that's all I got on this one.
Yeah, same. I yeah, I would just encourage people to give it a shot. I'll say one more thing too. This kind of rattling around in my head here. Going back to this idea about pay attention to your members and how they're responding to the program. I also think that a really big clue can be your coaching staff as well.
Oh,
If you are in
sure.
a bigger facility and you have multiple coaches, pay attention to how much they want to do the program that the gym is experiencing.
Mm.
If everybody's got their own kind of top secret stuff and they're all kind of spread out doing their own thing, to me, that's a pretty good signal that, like, hey, maybe we're missing the mark. Because at the end of the day, I get it. Everybody's got different goals and blah, blah, blah. We're all free to do what they want. Fine. However, I think that if you're running a gym and you truly are putting out something that is awesome, people will want to engage with it, including your coaching staff. They will want to jump into class every
Oh,
once in a while.
I would hope
They will
so.
be they will be fired up to catch some of the sessions that they might have missed, etc. And if that's the case, then I think you're really onto something positive. But if the alternative is true, where coaches aren't really engaged in the program, they're all seeking out their own stuff, you might have to ask yourself why.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Well, I have a feeling that this would be an interesting topic for people. So find this episode on the btwb YouTube channel. Post your thoughts, program for yourself, different program, pros and cons. Um, we read those, we find them interesting, and the more knowledge that we share, the better for everybody. If you have a topic or an idea for an upcoming show, post it there as well. Or you can go to the Very Not Random Instagram account, post a public comment there. Or if you'd like to be more discreet, you can send a direct message to the Very Not Random Instagram account. All of those things circle their way back to myself and Adrian. And so for Adrian Bosman, I'm Pat Sherwood, and we'll see you next time.